Oh, what's going?
Good. Good. How you doing?
Trying to make progress. I got I got like one full backend service deployed and operational. I just keep running into these publish Azure function errors. And like the last thing I want to do is delete the entire um, service and then republish it because then I lose all of my function keys for the client that wants to trigger it. So like, your client will call the Azure function, but if it's in like an actual environment outside of the dev environment, then it needs to pass it an API key. And if I delete the entire running Azure function to try to resolve why it's not publishing, recreate it, and then it publishes, like I lose all of my keys, and then I have to like re-enter them into the database again, into my SQL database. That while it's bootstrapped in the application, it gets all these API keys for every single Azure function. And there's like 100 Azure functions. I'm just getting frustrated because it just doesn't work like it should just work. Instead, I feel like I have to delete things just to recreate it and publish it successfully, and it's annoying me. I'm
Hmm.
done venting.
I was experimenting with Akka.net all week, and
Oh, I got a blog post on that.
yeah, I found it. I was looking
Oh, okay.
around. I'm like, oh, Scott Nimrod's blog. He did a
Yeah, I'm not
post on
sure how
Akka.net.
helpful it was. I mean, it's really just a brain dump. It's not really meant to serve anybody else.
It was
It's
on
just
sharding, right, which is something I didn't got to yet.
okay. Yeah.
But we had this thing at work where it was where we're doing like a hackathon for a week where you can just basically work on whatever you want. And so I wanted to do something with Akka.net because I've heard about it. It's like Elixir. When I was working with that, like that's all the patterns that Elixir does or has built into it, the
Is
actor
that a
model stuff.
is that a question or a statement?
No, a statement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like that. So I'm like, I want to return to that whole concept of the actor system and stuff like that and how it all works and build something in it. So that's why I picked to work with Akka. But my first idea didn't really work very good, which took the first 2 days, which I learned a little bit about Akka in the meantime. So, or in that time. So then I just hacked something together yesterday. But sounds
Yeah,
like it could solve your problem right now. No, just
that's
all built in.
Akka is kind of cryptic to me. So I think the creator is Aaron Stannard or something like that, and he's like he owns a company called like Petibridge.
Yeah.
He's and I'll listen to his, like some of the podcasts that he's a guest on. That dude is like a Star Trek Romulan, man. Like he's just really smart, and it's hard for me to keep up with what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was doing that. I was messing around with that stuff like I think like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. The documentation and the way it's presented could be easier to get people into it, maybe. Um, like
Especially the
Elixir
F sharp
goes,
part.
yeah, Elixir goes through like a really nice set of tutorials on how they put everything together. Um, like if it was the same but in .NET, where I wouldn't have to learn the language at the same time, I think it would have been a better overall experience to pick it up. But I hacked things together. I got a little cluster going and was able to like you know dispatch something to start a process or start a actor on another server and then send work out or broadcast work out to them to do. So it's pretty fun.
So you got to create your own crypto.
No, no. This is kind of like what I kind of built out was like to do like little tiny bots that respond to like event processors, basically, are what they are. So when basically a price point changes in our marketplace, it funnels it to one of these bots that would be configured, and then they just respond to it and decide what to do with it. So, but yeah, it's pretty neat how you can just how that's all put together. Feels like you could do a lot in it with just some simple processes rather than like building a bunch of tiny little .NET services that then you have to string together using service buses or whatever. For some like context, it seems like it'd be easier. So if you're trying to spread out work across within a single like context or whatever, I don't know. Anyhow,
Yeah, it's kind of cryptic to me. I never really understood it, which is why I was trying to like document my journey. So maybe if I wrote about it, it would kind of like, I don't know, sink in with me. But it never really did.
yeah, I mean, it seems like it could like work for your situation though. Um, because you could spin up an actor for every like unique interaction with a person. So that would then handle the messaging and where it has to go with stuff, the back end versus pumping it through Azure Service Bus and save that for bigger messages. For the real time streaming and messaging back and forth between a seller or a courier and a buyer, seems like it would like work well for that. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know either. All I know is I don't understand why. So I actually have two Azure functions that are published
Mm-hmm.
and tested, but I keep going through the same exercise of it won't of an error when I publish it, and then like it wants me to delete the entire service that I have, and then create it. I lose all my keys, and it takes me like a couple hours to re-add them. Like f that, I'm not doing that again.
So why do you have to recreate the keys? Is it just because
Because Azure is stupid.
a new
It keeps giving me an error saying the publish URL blah 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 is unreachable, and the only way I've been able to resolve it is to delete my Azure function, like my literal Azure function running in Azure, like on the internet, like that's already like out there. Delete the whole thing and then recreate it again, and then I lose all of my API keys that I have registered in my personal database that I use to bootstrap the application.
Okay. So the Azure function, and I haven't done anything with Azure functions in Azure, but that's actually like a resource you create once. You should be able to create once, has API keys, and then you just keep like updating the code within it. But the only way
Yeah,
to solve your problem right now is that you have to delete the entire Azure resource.
the way that I've been resolving the problem is deleting the entire like Azure function resource. Yes.
Yeah. So it'd be like if you spun up a SQL Server database in Azure and something went wrong in SQL Server, and the only way to resolve it was to delete the entire SQL Server instance out of Azure and then
Yeah.
recreate it. Okay. All right.
Uh,
And what kind of problem is why do you have to delete it? What was the error that it's throwing?
I mean, that's the only way I've been able to get around it. But it says like the publish URL is unreachable. So like on the actual Azure function, I right click to bring up the context menu and I click publish and I go through the wizard. And then when I finalize my request to publish and it attempts to publish, I get an error saying the publish URL is unreachable. Like, so it's I, I I I can't keep on deleting and doing all this rework unless I write a script to pull out all the API keys for each Azure function and seed my database with it, which I mean, I'm sure is doable. I just don't want to spend the next 3 days learning how to talk to the Azure API and walking through every single Azure function and every single uh, endpoint that's in there to do it.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do that. Yeah, so it works for a little while and just it's unavailable at this URL.
It works for a little while until I need to make a modification, and then it doesn't. The publish doesn't work anymore.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Is it the publish that's giving the URL, or is it the app when it's running?
It's a publish. The URL is the URL is specific to like a publish activity. So there's like some, I don't know.
Time to switch to lambdas, I suppose.
I wish I would have did AWS. The only reason why I did Azure is because I was already in the ecosystem, the .NET ecosystem, and I felt like it would be easier because it would be more F# friendly. That was the motivation to stick with Azure or to choose Azure.
How's the Scala learning going?
In Clojure?
Or Scala, or Clojure, rather. Sorry.
I literally like hustle like maybe an hour or 2 hours before my mentoring session. I can't find time. I can't find time. So I mean, we've been consistent. It's just I'm trying to push this app out, and it's competing with my time to learn anything new. And like I have a new job, and so like I think I just completed like my 4th week, and so I'm trying to like train for your marathon, your 5K, whatever that thing is. I think it's a half marathon, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to train for that, and I can't find time. Like I can't. I can't. I still haven't unpacked my stuff from my move like 2 weeks ago. Like my living room is literally like a warehouse. So
yeah, because you moved across the
uh,
hall or whatever.
So I mean, Clojure looks cool. The parentheses don't bother me. It is a paradigm shift. I really want, like, I mean, I have people calling me like, "Hey, what's your status on your beach delivery?" And I keep on telling them the same thing I'm telling you, like, working on the Azure deployments, and like, what's Azure? So I don't know. You have any recommendations
For finding time or for Azure deployments?
for finding time to learn Clojure? I feel like, I mean, someone is like, he's proactive. He messages me like, "Hey, I'm available if you want to have your session today," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, I don't want to waste his time. He wants to like help me.
Yeah.
So like suspending our Clojure thing is not an option. It's not.
Yeah. Is there like a service within your beach delivery app that you could write in Clojure so that you
Yeah,
haven't written yet?
yeah. There's some services. There's some services with there's like a suspicious activity service that I need to write, um, in which that suspicious activity could potentially identify like fraud with couriers, whether it's payroll or transactions with customers. And so, like, I mean, I got to reread my statistics book, but there should be like a standard deviation of activity that occurs. And of course, like, if this app gets downloaded, there should be like some type of like predictable pattern of usage of transactions, and also taking into account the hours of operation that people usually use that. And so when there's any type of significant outliers that deviate 2 3 times um, beyond the standard deviation, I want to get a notification, right? And so, make a long story short, there's a service that I need to write to notify me when things aren't following patterns that I expect, even accounting for growth week after week. Like when things deviate from the forecast of patterns, there should be a notification so I can investigate it and then pull my strap on whoever's trying to like cheat me out my money. I could write that in Closure, but I got to learn Closure first.
So
have you
yeah,
have
have
you
a
ever wrote anything like that? Like you write a service that will like notify you of something that isn't right that's worth investigating,
uh, not like that.
just based on
Um,
patterns of usage.
no, no, I mean no. Um, in fact, um, the company that I work for has something like that, but it's we we have a third party that we use to do that. We
Uh,
pump into, and it seems like something you could move off to a post MVP thing, and just if it does take off, pay someone else because it's a hard problem to solve. It's not.
it's its own product, really.
Yeah.
Like I would dog food it through this application, and there's also other factors like the weather, right? So this is like a beach accommodation app, and so like if it's raining, then yeah, like there's not going to be any transactions, right? So it has to take that into account where it actually like taps into like weather.com web service to figure out like what, based on the area code, what's the weather like, is it raining, take that into consideration before it sends me a notification that activity has dropped um, significantly beyond my expectations for today, etc. So
Hmm.
one thing I will admit is like it's that whole neuroplasticity thing, like I, this project has really like increased like my fundamentals, and like has me thinking on a broader scale of like the technical concerns of a business versus just the application itself. So I mean, I think this is a positive exercise. I just want to get this thing out without Azure barfing on me when I try to publish a service. So
Yeah, it's tricky. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Yeah, I don't know why it would stop publishing or whatever. That's odd. That's loud.
how's your training going?
For running,
Yeah.
good, good. I think I did a 6 mile continuous run this last weekend. Um, let's see, I did maybe a mile run this week sometime. After that, I wanted to give my legs some time to repair themselves because I felt like my shins were getting uh, a little hurt. So
Have you been
um,
doing cross training or just straight running?
I mostly just running and walking. I've done a lot of walking, but which is, I guess, a little bit different than running. Um, but no, I think I'm good. Actually, I've my brother-in-law started a little weight loss competition thing too, so I signed up for that. So I've been doing some fasting and stuff this week.
Yeah, I
Been
lost
on
weight.
that.
Like I lost weight too.
I
That
weighed in.
2 miles a day is starting to slim me down.
I weighed in like at I think 214, and today I'm at like, and that was Monday. Today I'm at
How
202,
tall are you?
about 5'9".
You weigh 214? That's like Tyson size. Are you that big?
I I'm not that big, no.
I thought like
I'm
so Tyson.
overweight, but
I thought Tyson was like 5'9", 220 or something. You don't strike me as a big person, like, but I guess you're always sitting down. But you're 5'9". Like, I don't know. Really?
yeah, I got a little tire here I got to get rid of, but
Yo,
um,
you're a freaking Viking, man. Well, hold up. Vikings are from like the Scandinavian countries,
yeah, yeah, I'm
so they're taller,
Scandinavian
right?
actually.
Well, I thought
No,
are
I don't know.
Scandinavians kind of like Italians, where they're on the taller side, or even like Germans, where they're on the taller side?
I don't know. I don't know what the historical height sizes of various European countries are.
Yeah, you can't be Scandinavian because you're 5'9". No, I gotta look it up now. Hold up.
I'm I'm Norwegian, Swedish, German, Polish, Irish are all the countries my forebears came from. So
Scandinavian height chart.
did I say 5'9"? No, I'm 5'11". What am I talking about?
Yeah, why? How do you confuse your height?
I don't know. It's been a while since I've thought about it. Why would I say 5'9"?
Yeah, I don't know either. Because I'm like, that's Tyson size, and he's
No,
like a tank. You don't look like a tank.
not tank. No, I'm 5'11". Sorry. So I'm two
Okay.
inches, or a few inches more than that. 3 inches more than that. No, 2 inches. Man, my brain's not working this morning. Apparently, must be all the hacking this week. Worst thing about a hackathon is though is that like you get into something. It's the same thing with Ludum Dare. You get into something really interesting, and then after that you want to go and work on it or continue on it, but you have to go back to real life, and it's kind of depressing.
Did you do that recently?
Well, this week was been a hackathon at work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. They basically like you
That's
can
weird
use.
because you're doing it remote. You're not
Yeah,
like in a room with a whole bunch of nerds with like free food coming in.
yeah. I did it
And
solo too, so you could have teams, but I don't know people well enough, or I don't have a. I don't know.
the first and only hackathon I was in, I think I told you like 2 3 years ago. Like I was so disappointed in my team. First of all, they recruited me, which I wasn't interested in participating. I just wanted to work on my project, this project, and that was like 2.5 years ago. Like I wasn't interested in helping anybody. I just wanted to like be with some other programmers, work on my personal stuff that was unrelated to the hackathon, and just provide some moral support or whatever. And they're like, "Hey, why don't you work with us?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." "No, we could really use you." I'm like, "All right." And then like the the day, the morning of presentations, they didn't show up. They were like an hour late. A hackathon is like you give like 12, 13, 14 hours for like 2 days. I was so disappointed in them. Like they wasted
Yeah,
my life. I could have been working on my stuff. So
yeah. We got basically the last 3 work days to work on it. Total of 24 hours. So you're supposed to cut yourself off, which is really hard to do. And then we present today.
and what was even weirder, I think I shared this with you before. Like I thought that we were, if our presenters did show up, if my team did show up, obviously everybody thinks that they should win at a at a at a hackathon. Well, the difference was like we actually were solving. I felt like we were solving a real problem. Our hackathon, like it was like a disaster thingy, and how to work through a disaster. like a hurricane coming or earthquake. And so we were the only ones that did a mobile app. It was a, we were the only ones that used a mobile app with VR, right? And so first responders would be able to put on their goggles. They already have an understanding of the structures of different houses and what rooms are, where the bedrooms are. And like we had did all this. Everybody else just had websites, right? Almost every other team had a website for doing like data entry. But we had like an interactive like first responder like VR like solution for them rescuing people. And I sincerely believe that the only reason why we lost was because another team had literally like spent the night at the FedEx office working on their project, and they felt sorry for them, so they gave them first place. I
Hmm.
sincerely believe that. Like, I don't think they didn't build anything like interactive. It was just data entry, but that might just be me being a hater.
Yeah, I don't expect to win.
I expect to win, man. Like, I'm competitive.
Yeah,
Like, I don't. If you're going to recruit me to participate in a hackathon and I can't work on my project, I want gold. Like, I want my medallion. Like, f that. Else, it's not
yeah.
worth my time.
I'm super competitive, but that to a fault though, because I do you ever get to the situation where you get into a competitive like thing like this where it's not like you have to come up with the idea, right? And so my constant thing is rethinking how competitive the idea is and not believing in it and then switching. Which happens in Ludum Dare too. Um,
Mine's all right. So let's have a really honest talk. Uh, so outside of like running half marathons, like that's not competitive to me because there's no way I'm going to compete with the Africans. Well, the
yeah,
Africans don't even do half marathons are beneath Africans, right? They just do marathons or ultra marathons, baby.
yeah,
And so like in regards to half marathons, no, I'm not competitive because I know that like I just have handicaps. I'm 6'7", I'm 250 pounds. Like there's no way I'm going to win a half marathon with someone that's 5'7" and 150 pounds. Like it's no way, right?
hmm,
And plus they have more time to train and they probably have a better like mental whatever. Uh, Outside of that, I'm hella competitive, but I think I was conditioned for that, and so like real talk, I'm sure it's frowned upon, and it may not be other people's reality, but it's my reality. Is because I am a minority, because when you look at TV, they don't show people that have my skin color depicted in mainstream consistently being doctors and lawyers and architects. I feel like I always have to prove myself. And it's because of that that I kind of feel as if I have to, and this is the part that's controversial, but this is me being brutally honest. I have to demonstrate why I'm better than most white people within my field. I know that's very like, oh God, I'm about to get canceled, but that's honestly the way I feel. Like if I can't carve out a healthy, comfortable lifestyle for myself, I feel like I have to defy stereotypes. I feel like I just like when what do you call it, immigrants come into the states and they start setting up their businesses and they tend to do well with their convenience stores or their gas stations. I may not be able to relate to them because their struggle is probably a lot harder since they're not a United States citizen. But I feel as if like I have to go above and beyond to demonstrate that I'm more advanced than the main demographic of people that build software. And that's just honest talk. I'm sure it's racist, but that's what drives me in order for me to carve out a comfortable lifestyle for myself. I have to demonstrate that I'm better. And I expect the same thing out of my children. And it's sad, but this is society, and this is what society has done to me. So,
Yeah. Although I don't know, because there's I think the silver lining of some of that stuff is if you have disadvantages to overcome, there I think that gives you a bit of purpose, which is I think purpose is like one of the bigger components of happiness, right? If you have a purpose, you're you can find like happiness in advancing towards that purpose or overcoming the struggles with it. Um, and I think a lot of people who are really successful, not because of like that are actually successful, not just rich, but had to come overcome some adversity, which kind of, you know, made them who they are, kind of a thing. Um, but when you don't have any problems, you don't have any like anything to overcome. You just it's that's I think why a lot of depression and stuff happens. So
Yeah, I think so too. Like your argument may be, well, Scott, you're tall, but like imagine going through life like at a community college, at a university. Like imagine going through life where people believe that the only reason why you're at school is to entertain other people.
yeah.
And so
Oh,
that
Scott, you're probably on a basketball scholarship.
yeah, and I think someone asked me, "Do I play ball yesterday?" And I'm like, "Do I look like I'm young enough to play basketball?" Like, but like going through being at an institution of education
Hmm.
and of like a career boot camp and being consistently inundated with people that are trying to impose what they believe you should be doing, it kind of feeds into like my competitive nature and the whole thing. I said my purpose in life within my career is to be better than white people that are in my career. I know it sounds racist as hell, and I know that I probably should be ashamed of saying that, but that's the amount of that's the anger that I've developed in which I felt as if society has always tried to put me inside of a box that my mind's not black, my mind's not white, my mind is not Asian. My mind is all the experiences that I have gone through and the decisions that I have made as a result that has put me in this conversation with you as of August 27th, 2021 at 8:10 a.m. Like, so it's just weird how like society tries to drive people into certain areas in life.
Hmm.
And I kind of believe that's why Chicago is what it is. I kind of believe that's why a lot of people are in the situations that they're in. If you talk about like Bloods and Crips in LA, etc., it's like because people keep on trying to reinforce those stereotypes, and it's not helping. It's not helping us. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. It keeps people where they are. It's the yeah, yeah. We could get into a big political discussion on that
Yeah,
too, in
yeah,
terms of like it's what's interesting is that the part of the like conservative, the like Republican side of the world believes that the liberals are tend to be considered like allies
hey
of
Roman.
minorities and stuff, right? Or the Democrats, and the idea like what goes through people who are more conservative leaning like me, which am more libertarian leaning, but is that they actually try to continue to enforce these kinds of like you know situations because it's beneficial to them. So keeping people in poverty and stuff and not letting them pull themselves out.
Oh, you talking about the liberals?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. And so, and this is what Malcolm X was saying. Malcolm X was basically saying, okay, liberals, um, we appreciate that you're trying to help the black cause, right? But what would be even more helpful is if you provide support, but get out of our way, right? Meaning that let people that are underrepresented take the lead in representing themselves instead of like having in Malcolm X days, having a white person, represent the interests of underrepresented people or blacks. And I could see a counter argument to that is, well, white folks probably had more opportunities to gain a better education, aka understanding of how things are today, and they can probably relate to the audience that is in a position to help underrepresented minorities the best. I get that. I mean, at the end of the day, everything's about relationships and rapport and who you can relate to. So I get both sides, but
Yeah, it's not a it's part of that too, but it's part of the reason why like the discussion of like welfare and all those kinds of things, and specifically like well, and actually any race's use of welfare, it's and it just goes back to the talk we had or the discussion we had earlier about when you're put at a disadvantage in something and you have like a life or death situation or a survival type situation, it can get hairy for a little while, but you tend to like when you're confronted with it, you find a way out of it. But if you're given something, a way out of it, and you're kept comfortable, you'll stay in where you are.
yeah.
So,
So 2 days ago, I was in South Beach at the mall, Lincoln Road Mall, and they have these people that they either want to they want you to sponsor some animals, save the animals, or in this case, a couple days ago, they stopped me, and like I'm a polite dude. Like if you go out, even if you're working, if you go out your way to say hello to me, like I feel like I have to say hello back, right? Instead of like ignore them and keep on walking, even though I know that what their agenda is.
hmm
But like, so they're like, hey, we want to solve like hunger in Africa, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not interested in giving my credit card information, and I honestly don't believe that civilians can make a difference. I think this is a government effort. And he's like, oh, well, what do you mean? You don't want to help starving, children in Africa? And I'm like, I do want to help them. I just think it's futile for me to pull out my credit card, give it to you, because it's not going to solve. It's not a solution. And I mean, I remember like the infomercials of the 90s and children in Somalia and them purposely putting flies on their face, right, and recording it and sharing it. And like, what's going to happen? You're going to take my money. You're going to take the money of senior citizens that feel sorry for these people. They're going to get a fraction of the money, and they're not going to get education. They're not going to like get a better understanding of the artificial boundaries that were drawn by Europeans during colonization, so that they can be better prepared for how to respond in their lives to the future in regards to policies. You're just going to give them rice. You're not going to teach them how to fish. You're not going to teach them how to farm. You're just going to give them rice. And that's all you're going to do. And so instead of their life expectancy being 30, they're going to live to be like, I don't know, 50. And they're going to have hella children, right? And like, we're just sustaining the problem by feeding them and not educating them. And they're going to reproduce like rabbits. And that's what I told them. And I'm like, we're, we're, we're adding fuel to the fire. He's like, why would you say that? And I'm like, because it's the truth. Yeah,
yeah,
but I say all this because, and I know we're deviating. What was the train of thought originally? Is
I don't know.
uh, basically, long story short, is you got to teach a man to fish. You can't just give them money and expect that their problems are going to be solved. You can't just tell Black Lives Matter, yes, you're absolutely right. Systemic racism is real. Here's some money, and without them really having, without people really demonstrating that they know how to like move that money in a way that it can be productive for underrepresented people. And so, like, I don't know. I just think it's a government effort. I don't think we, as much as we should be helping ourselves, I think it requires an act of government, a world power government, to really change things. And when I was talking to the guy that wanted me to save hungry people, I told him that World War II would not, Hitler would not have been resolved by senior citizens sending in money. It was resolved by world powers coming together to ally against them. And it was a government effort. And I think it's the same thing for other major problems in this world, such as hunger, such as disease, etc. It requires a government effort with guns and $1 trillion bankroll to really solve that problem. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you're allowed to disagree.
Yeah. Well, I disagree that the government is capable at doing certain things. Cite Afghanistan, for example. You spend
Well,
$1 trillion at a place, and it goes back to the way it was. That's a government trying to solve a problem and it not taking hold. I think that mostly it has to be the will of the people within a region to want to be. If the problem is the government or the nature of the place that's causing the issues, um, it's kind of up to the people there to decide that they want to change or want to be different, and to overcome that themselves. And then, you
okay.
know, but I don't. But I agree with you that people that are um, nonprofit stuff like that that take a big sliver for their CEOs and stuff like that, and then send rice is definitely not a solution to anything. Um, it might make it just comfortable. It's like the dog on the nail analogy, which is probably pretty bad. You ever hear that one?
No.
You got to read that book Unscripted. So a guy walks up to the gas station and he walks in. He's gonna go in and he sees this dog laying on this nail and it's whimpering and but it's laying there on the nail, but it's hurting obviously from it and it's whimpering. But he just looks at it and goes, "That's odd." And he walks in to the convenience store and he gets a pop and goes out and he says, that dog out there, he's whimpering, and he'd probably be better if he just got off that stupid nail. And the cashier just goes back and goes, "I guess it doesn't hurt bad enough," you know. Which I probably murdered the delivery on that, but um, so why doesn't he? Yeah, he asked why doesn't he get off the nail? It's because it doesn't hurt bad enough. And so
Yeah.
things might hurt, but if you keep people comfortable, or it's just comfortable to not take action themselves, that's not to say that after you get to a certain point that having investment and stuff could from other countries could really up things, but I think it's a different kind of investment. It's infrastructure and techniques and sharing intellectual property. It's not sharing food, you know.
Hey,
So
brother. I still think it's a government effort. All right. So let's use a very extreme example, and this probably has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So you said the Afghanistan debacle,
mhm.
um, in which I would argue that the objectives for Afghanistan was to not provide a sanctuary for terrorists. The catch 22 is they invaded Afghanistan, they invaded Iraq, especially, and they attracted terrorists to fight for the cause, to unite, right?
It was a government effort. So
Yeah. So, what what's a very good example right now? You have you where you live at, or at least within your state, compared to Florida where I'm at. You Minnesota probably has some Native American reservations, right? I've never personally been to one, but outside of like Indian casinos, I hear like reservations in general. I'm not sure if they're really that much different from housing projects, like drug problems, alcohol problems, and like these are people that have pretty much been products of genocide from like the early, I don't know, mid to late 1800s. And well, if the argument is they have to want it for themselves and they have to demonstrate it, speaking of like indigenous people of United States, how do they do that? The history of our government pretty much put them or forced them into an area where like they're just not, they just don't have the same opportunities or even the same support as mainstream Americans. I don't know.
They
Is
have
that
considerably more support. They're like
you-
sovereign nations. These reservations are,
oh, so
but
all okay, I'm listening.
but I mean, that's the thing with within casinos in Minnesota. To my understanding, is that they all the money that gets funneled in casino goes to the tribe as a whole. So you get money um, as part of the tribe. But this goes back to what I was
I
saying
mean, it was
before
probably
that
intended for that.
yeah, well, it does, but it's the dog on the nail. They have a lot of problems because they're hurting for with drugs and alcohol and all sorts of things like that. But
Okay, I- I'm
it's
I'm trying my best to listen before I
yeah,
respond.
it's the dog on the nail. They're comfortable, just enough comfortable because their needs are met. Don't have adversity to actually the lack of adversity is the adversity. Um,
I think they're in a position that they're in systemically because of, I don't even want to say our government. I'll say your government,
well,
right? It is. Do they have a responsibility living in a like first world like nation where they have opportunities and they probably have more opportunities than black people?
they don't have to
Probably.
live on a reservation. You don't have to live on a reservation.
Okay, so why do they?
Yeah, why do they?
I'm asking you.
I don't know. I'm not one of them. I don't think the thing is, and they have
I
a
would
lot
think
of
that they have more autonomy on the reservation. They have, yes, the does the Fed interfere? Probably, but I'm not sure if the state interferes in their activities. Like I don't know. I don't have any Native American friends.
yeah. Well, there is a big difference between. So we have probably like a few different reservations in the area. The one that's south of us here, I don't think is like they're I think wealthier because they're closer to the cities and they've got a lot of people coming through. But the ones up north, it's just as you described. I think it's that one's like it's kind of eerie going through that reservation, and the relationship between the reservations and stuff is so interesting. But I know in like if you want as a Native American to get educated, you probably can get everything paid for all the way through
Oh, I
everywhere.
hope so.
Yeah, but why don't anybody take advantage of that? I don't, or why don't they?
And I understand your point because
Yeah,
like when I was in college, especially community college, hella people. Like my community college is literally like in the middle of the projects, like literally like Cuyahoga Community College, Metro Campus, in the middle of the projects. And so like when the semester would start, I see hella people. I'm like, oh shoot, hella women. Oh shoot, right? And then they start, uh, people start getting their financial aid checks, and it's like a third to a half of them are gone. Okay, so they get their like $2,000 checks, and For women, if they have kids and they're single parents, $3,000, $4,000 checks, and they vacate. They don't go to school. They only registered for classes because they wanted to get financial aid. They want to get that money, right? Which is designed for books, right? Which is designed for paying for your courses. But like, nah, they just took that money and then left. So yeah, to your point, culturally it's effed up, right? And I still, yes, I believe that like as human beings, we're gods on this earth. Like we have way more power to especially within developed countries to to change our directory to something that is more like prosperous for us. I do believe that, but as long as we're in environments, as long as we stay in environments of ignorance where like you consistently see people that don't care about themselves, they don't care about the community, it's it's going to affect you. Like unless you're like a true anomaly and you're a one percenter, you're going to follow the path of everybody that you see within your environment. You are.
Yeah, yeah,
I still think it's a
makes sense.
government effort to change that.
But to do what? To try to make, what are they going to change?
So one is provided. Pro, I would argue provide an economic reason for someone to stay in school and to maintain a B average. Pay them. How many people would drop out of school if at the end of every semester they would get an additional like $3,000?
So you're saying pay for performance or whatnot?
I would say within urban communities that are plagued with high dropout rates and other issues, pay pay those students or pay the parents. I guess pay the parents, right? I don't know if you want to call it a stimulus or whatever, but pay them to keep their not only keep their kids in school, but for their kids to maintain uh, a, a B average. I think if that goes over a decade, I think things are going to change. I really do.
Is
I,
this? But isn't that?
and still hold them accountable for the same education that we expect across demographics, right?
But isn't that nuance though? In that it's kind of like paying developers to fix bugs.
I think this is different. This is a culture that you're trying to fix.
Yeah,
And
but you're incentivizing it with money. It's still, it's
you're
kind of. So here's my thought is
the
that,
reason why it's effed up is because of money.
yeah, but my thought is
Like
that.
I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Oh no, go ahead.
Your thing froze. Your video
Oh,
froze, but I still hear you.
uh,
Uh, right now, right right now, people that are in these areas, they're surrounded by drug dealers, they're surrounded by drug addicts, they're surrounded, more than likely their fathers are dead or locked up in jail. Like it's not a conducive environment for them to blossom. It's not, right? Those are facts. And so I think that it would take a government effort to turn that around. And one way to turn that around is money incentivizes people. It does. It does,
yeah,
right? And
yeah, but it.
so, okay, I'm listening.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say, so if we agree that money is an incentive and arguably a catalyst for change, then inject that into these environments that we already know is a high likelihood of failure. We already know that it's a high likelihood that the cities that are sustaining these people consistently need federal or state dollars to keep them afloat because they're not producing members of society that can actually pay taxes sustainably. They're not. Look at East Cleveland, right? It's a prime example. There's been talks of East Cleveland being annexed either by Cleveland Heights, where I'm from, or the city of Cleveland because like they don't generate any money at all. Like I think white people make up like 1% of that city. Like, and yeah, I bring up colors because like they don't have much going on there, right? I don't even think they could gentrify it. I think it's beyond that point. So
So, but the thing is, well, one thing I think in just human nature though is that if you give someone external motivation, they'll chase it as long as that motivation stays there or that's useful to them. But I don't think that produces change. The only thing that really produces change is that internal, you know, motivation. Um, and somebody has to want to leave. But you are right. Maybe the thing is that uh, maybe the solution here is to actually pay. You could pay someone to, but they have to go to a college that's way the hell out of wherever they from. You have
it,
to move them to frickin'
I'm not talking about college.
or
I'm talking about elementary school, middle school, high school.
oh,
Maybe
so you're talking about school choice now.
elementary school is probably. I mean, people don't drop out of elementary school, right?
You don't
People
have a
probably.
choice to go there.
I would say high school. Pay
Yeah,
within these plagued communities, incentivize the parents to keep their kids in school, right? Incentivize the mom that's hooked on meth or crack to keep her kid in school and to keep her kid maintaining a B average. What I sincerely believe or is likely is that when that child graduates high school, that child now has prospects for being accepted into college, right? That kid goes to college. That kid probably won't come back, unfortunately, which is maybe a counter argument because the whole point is to take an area that's plagued with unproductivity or unproductive members of society and to hopefully inject productive members of society so that kids can know what they can aspire to. It becomes visible to them. You seeing crack addicts and gang members all the time, consistently every single day, you're not going to be a politician. I mean, you could, right? But you're not going to aspire to be something great. The odds are very much against you, right? You're more likely to be in prison. You are. So, like, but the counter argument, and it's just like myself, like, I lived in Cleveland when I was in college. Like, I lived in East Cleveland. Like, if you look at my street now, that entire block is condemned. They shut down the entire street. It's not livable, right? I lived there, right? And what happened? I'm living in Miami Beach. I'm living with a whole bunch of Orthodox Jews and a whole bunch of rich Russians, right? The point is, I had no incentive to go back to Cleveland because it wasn't serving me. I don't want to go to my 9 to 5 job, come home and see my door kicked in because people know my schedule. Like, and so that's the part where you may have a counter argument. You if the state or the Fed financially incentivizes these parents to keep their kids in school and maintain a certain GPA, great. These kids, it sounds like, are incentivized to get out of the hood and not return back to it to hopefully gradually over a decade or two change it into like a normal town, a normal suburb. We want to change the hood into a suburb, but yeah, people that have made it out the hood, there's no incentive for them to return. Why? It's a security risk. They have everything to lose, and they really don't have that much to gain. They can say that they want to give back, but that is a sacrifice. So
yeah. So you were paid to main. Well, I was going to say any incentive is going to get misused for sure, but which is the financial aid situation you talked before. But you were paid to keep a B average. No, you did it yourself. You got out of there. But that was that was a internal motivation that drove you.
I got out of there because I had, well, for up until the age of 14, I had two parents that cared about my education, right? My parents lived check to check to keep us in a uh, a middle class neighborhood that was half black, half white. They lived check to keep us there, right? We were still poor. I've been paying rent since the age of 12, delivering papers and then giving my mother like $40, right? Keeping the lights on, like so, like it is what it is. The difference is like I had both parents in my life up until the age of 14, and then my father passed, and my parents stayed on top of things. And not only that, even though I'm like agnostic and I'm kind of borderline anti-religion, I come from a very religious family. And so you come from a very religious family, you have like support from other people in the congregation. And now, like most religions, I would think that you represent the family name, right? So there's even more pressure for you to for your parents to be on top of you so that you don't embarrass them. And so I think there was a lot of things going for me that other people don't have going for them. And I think that was the difference. Now, am I somewhat like wired a different way? Yeah, if you look at my siblings, you look at my brother and my sister, I'm completely different. Like they're still like, well, one is they're extremely religious. They two is they're lifers, so they wherever they chose to work at, they've been working there 20, 30 years. Like they don't, they're very conservative. With me, I job hop like every 6 months. I change money. I try to give myself a raise every 6 months of like 10% or more, and so it's just wired differently. But make a long story short, I had parents that cared, and I think religion was a major factor that increased pressure to keep me on a path that wouldn't embarrass my parents. And the fact that my parents recognized that they didn't want to be embarrassed is a difference. I think some people, they have no shame at all. Some parents have no shame at all. You can't embarrass them. They're already at the bottom. They don't care about their reputation. They don't. So I
So
think
what
those were some of the factors.
so what I heard is that we should take every single kid who has crackhead parents, take them away from their parents and give them to somebody who's highly religious with two parents, and that would solve the problem.
I think if a parent, real talk, I think if a parent is failing to control their kid, then that needs to be handled.
Yeah, control, but yeah, I don't know. But then there's you know, you should have rights over your family or with your family and stuff like that. So
At what cost?
yeah,
At
I don't
what
know.
cost? Like events happen, life hits you, right? You if you're poor, you can't take care of yourself. Should you still have the right to have children? I see both sides. I do. It's a human right to reproduce,
Yeah,
but at what cost? I would argue it's a human right to put whatever you want into your body. Crack, meth, heroin. It's a human right, but at what cost? Who is affected? What are the consequences? I think we have to take that into consideration as well.
well, maybe. Although if you think about it, there are no consequences, no real
Of
consequences
what?
of anything.
There are consequences. The housing projects is a consequence.
Yeah, but
The
that's
the
because you
you
think it's a problem. I mean,
it is a problem.
100 years from now might not be a problem at all.
The United States prison population is a consequence.
But you see these as big problems.
I do see them as big problems, as opposed to what?
But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's there. There's we're all just gonna die and move on, and there'll be another generation, and they might do better or worse, and then they'll die, and then just saying
It's
like
in the grand scheme of
this
things.
is getting yeah.
It, in the grand scheme of things, it's about the quality of life. All right, so you may be in an area where you're comfortable. I'm in the area right now where I'm comfortable, but we get uncomfortable when it starts coming next door to us, right? And then we don't, and then we start begging the politicians to do something about it, or else we're going to vote for somebody else. So, like, what I'm saying is like, are we having a conversation about solving world hunger and making the world a better place and rah rah? Yeah, we are. But I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but maybe I'm just closer to that problem than you are. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, you
Maybe I'm just
probably
more
are.
affected by it,
That's
or maybe I could maybe what's the word I'm looking for? May, maybe I can relate to it more. That's all.
yeah, yeah, fair enough. But
And that is probably the end of our religious government debate at 8:45.
yeah, probably should hit up.
And Roman said, "Oh, I need to find a talk about this topic. It had some ideas." Second, Googling, and then he said he can't find it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Roman, you could ping us on Twitter. I would like to. I would like to look at it. So I feel like I drained Sean's mental capacity for this morning while he tries to go to work.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All of this is because I can't publish an Azure function. So
Yeah, the Azure functions. If you could just solve that, would solve all of world hunger. If you could publish it. So
all right, it's been real. Next
see you
week,
later.
I'll try to get half a dozen functions published. Like I said 2 months ago. So that's it.
Alrighty, have a good
All
one.
right. See you. Bye.
Bye.
See you, Roman.